I was 13 the first time I saw a police officer up close. He was arresting me for driving without a license. At the time, I didn't know what a license was, and I wasn't too clear on what being arrested meant either. But by then, they were loading Rain onto a stretcher to rush her in for x-rays. So I barely noticed the handcuffs the officer slapped on my wrists.
Who's the owner of this pickup?
It belongs to the community, I told him. He made a note on his ring-bound pad.
What community is that? Golf club condo deal?
Garland Farm. He frowned.
Never heard of that one.
Rain would have been pleased. That was the whole point. The community allowed us to escape the money-hungry rat race of modern society. If people didn't know us, they couldn't find us, and we could live our lives in peace. It's an alternative farm commune, I explained. The officer goggled at me. Alternative? You mean like hippies? Rain used to be one back in the 60s. There were 14 families at Garland. Now it's just Rain and me. I tried to edge towards the nursing station. I have to make sure she's okay. He was unmoved.
Who's Rain? According to her social security card, the patient's name is Rachel Esther Rosenblatt.
Her name is Rain, and she is my grandma. I stifled. She fell out of a tree. He stared at his notes. What is a 67-year-old woman doing up in a tree? Picking plums, I replied defensively. She slipped. So, you drove her here at 13. I drive all the time, I informed him. Rain taught me when I was 8. Sweat appeared on his upper lip. You never just thought about dialing 911? I regarded him blankly. What's 911? The emergency number on the telephone. I told him the truth. I had talked on the telephone a few times in town, but we didn't have one. He looked at me like what seemed like forever. What's your name, son? Cap. It's short for Capricorn. He unlocked my handcuffs, and I was unarrested. How could an able-bodied teenager allow his grandma to scale a plum tree? Simple. She wasn't my grandma at the time. She was my teacher. I was homeschooled. That was the law. Even on a tiny farm like ours, you had to get an education. No school bus could ever make it up that rutted, snake-dirting road that led to Garland. But transpo wasn't the only issue. Even if it was serviced by an 8-lane highway, Rain would still have handled my schooling personally. We wanted to avoid the low standards and cultural poison of a world that's lost its way. So that's what I was doing when Rain fell. Working on a vocabulary lesson. Most of the list came from the 8th grade curriculum. Barometer, decagon, perpendicular. But I could always spot those extra words that Rain threw in. Nonviolence, Zen Buddhism, psychedelic, microprocessor. I frowned at the paper on the unpainted wooden table. Was this Rain's or the state? Never heard that one before. I stepped out of the house, careful not to disturb my science project. The Foucault pendulum suspended from the porch roof. The tester from the education department thought it was good enough to enter in the county science fair. Too bad we didn't believe in competition. All that emphasis on trophies and medals and shiny objects leads to an empty soul. Anyways, Rain thought it was all a big trick to get me to go to regular school. If your project is excellent, it only proves you're getting a superior education right here, had been her reasoning. I spotted her up in a tree, reaching across a limb to pick a plum. Rain, I don't understand a word. And then it happened. 1 minute she was on the branch, the next she was on the ground. I don't even recall seeing her fall, just the faint cry followed by a dull clunk. Wah! Whoop! Rain! She was lying on her side amidst the scattered plums when I pounded onto the scene. Her face was pale. She wasn't moving. My terror was total. Rain was everything to me. My teacher, my family, my whole universe. Garland was a community, but we were the community, just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Rain and I. I knelt beside her. Rain, are you okay? Please be okay. Her eyes fluttered open, focused on me. She tried to smile, but the pain contorted her expression into a grimace. Cap, she began faintly. I leapt to my feet. I'll go get Doc Cafferty. Doc Cafferty lived a few miles away. He was technically a veterinarian, but he was used to working on humans since he had 6 kids. He'd given me stitches once when I was 8. She reached up with a tremulous hand and gripped my arm. We need a real doctor this time, a people doctor. I stared at her like she was speaking a foreign language. Doc Cafferty had always filled Garland's medical needs as long as I could remember. She spelled it out. You're going to have to take me to the hospital. Rain always said anger upsets the balance inside a person. So when you yell at somebody, you're attacking yourself more than whomever it is you're yelling at. Falling out of the tree must have made her forget this, because when the nurses finally let me in to see her, she was screaming at the top of her lungs. I can't do 8 weeks of rehab. I can't even do 8 days. You've got no choice, the doctor said matter-of-factly. You got a broken hip. It's got to be pinned, and after that, you're going to need extensive physical therapy. It's a long process, and you can't ignore it just because it doesn't fit into your plans. You're not listening, Rain shrilled. I'm a caregiver to my grandson, the only caregiver. What about the parents? Doc asked. Where are they? She shook her head. They fall down, go boom. Long dead. Malaria. They're with the Peace Corps in Namibia. They gave their lives for what they believed in. That sounds worse than it is. But I never knew my parents except from old pictures. They left when I was little. Besides, the rule at Garland was that we all belonged to each other, and it didn't matter who you related to by blood. I have a few vague recollections of other people in the community when I was really young. But whether they were my parents or not, I can't tell. Anyways, it's impossible to miss what you never had. I rushed to my grandma's bedside. Are you okay? Is your leg all fixed? She looked grave. We've got a problem, Cap. And you know what we do with problems. We talk it out, we think it out, and we work it out, I said readily. It had been that way since the beginning of time, at least in Garland in 1967, long before I was born. Now that it was just the two of us, Rain still gave me a full vote. She never treated me like I was just a kid. Doc was growing impatient. How about cousins or maybe a close friend from school? I'm homeschooled, I supplied. The doc sighed. Mrs. Rosenblatt. That name hasn't applied to me for decades. You can call me Rain. All right, Rain. I'm admitting you now. We're going to operate in the morning, and I will call social services to see what arrangements can be made for you and your grandson. That's when I first started to worry about what was going to happen to me.